Mansfield in the morning on this Saturday morning. Mel, how's it?
How you doing?
I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, fine.
One, two, three, four, fine.
Yeah, I was just counting them.
Okay.
Counting them up.
And
Yeah.
how's your libido?
It's a very personal question.
Well, we're
Ms.
talking
Walker.
about things that can help all kinds of issues that a grown man may have.
Well, I think my libido's fine. How's your libido?
I don't know. I've been single for too long. Anyway, so the reason I'm asking is we're going to be talking about mushrooms today, and there's this one mushroom called Cordyceps sinensis, which was actually discovered by yaks. And the people who had the yaks noticed that these things were rooting around and they were eating something, and the next
then they
thing,
were
these things
pumping-
were bounding around the fields.
So they went and found what they were eating, and they ate it.
Yeah.
And then they found themselves
Bouncing
bouncing
around the
the
fields. Yeah. You know what they'd say about mushrooms, of course? All mushrooms are edibles. Sometimes only once.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And some mushrooms can feed you just one mushroom for the whole day.
Really?
Yeah, because
Where do you
wouldn't
find
be able
all
to
this
eat after.
rubbish out for?
Well, anyway, we've got somebody who can tell you more about it. A fungi.
A fun guy.
Yeah, a mycologist, because I always call them fungologists, which I think is a really cool name.
Yeah.
And then one of these things that we get so many questions about, people walking around and saying, oh, I saw these mushrooms. Can I eat them? I'm like, of course you can eat them. I don't know if you should. But there's some people who do know a lot more about it than I do. So to join us, we've got Paul Keats from Fungi Town.
Hello, Paul.
Hi
Welcome to Mansfield today. Nice to
Cheers.
have you with us. Firstly, is there a distinctive way in which you could look at a mushroom and say this is edible or this is not?
To a certain extent, yes, but I wouldn't recommend it because it also had, don't forget, mushrooms are 90% moisture, liquid, and that comes from the ground. So you also have to take into account what's growing around it and what could be coming from any sort of runoff.
So don't go wandering around and just eating anything, unless the yaks have eaten them first. But I don't know where we're going to find a herd of yaks.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem, especially in Joburg. Yeah. Okay, so it would be better if one went to prescribed shops and bought your fungi.
Yes. Even if you're going to be growing them yourselves, you would still get them from a prescribed shop, or you would clone your own from the local greengrocer.
Well, I'll tell you something. I've tried to grow mushrooms at home. Have you tried?
No.
It is a lot more difficult than it actually looks like. And you can go into a shop and you'll see these things, grow your own oyster mushrooms or grow your own shiitake. Mine keep getting mold. Is it like really quite difficult to grow mushrooms, or am I just being a blonde?
You're probably being a blonde, but yes, mushrooms can be difficult to grow because of molds. So mushrooms like moisture and they like lots of it, but they don't like wet. The moment there's wet, you're going to find mold and other competing fungi are going to start growing there, and they will take over from the mushroom itself.
No,
So
but
in
hang
growing
on.
mushrooms, everything you do, you're trying to give your mushroom the best chance to survive against all odds, basically.
So hang on, you confusing me here, saying that they like moisture but they don't like wet. So would that
Yes.
mean that you would water them essentially from the bottom, or what is the secret here behind
No,
not getting mold?
once they start growing, you don't water them at all. You have to make the substrate, the earth that they grow in, to a 60 to 70% moisture content, which should be enough to last them during the growing phase, which is probably 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, so you've got to keep it moist, that substrate, but not wet.
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
know that millennials hate that word for some reason. Moist. I'm going to say it again, moist. But anyway, so one
Moist.
of the things, and I've spoken to Paul before, is the fact that mushrooms are actually a superfood. They're classified as one of the top 10 in the superfood varieties. Why is this? Why are mushrooms so good for people?
Because they have all the minerals and the vitamins and the benefits that a lot of other things don't have. They are 100% natural, rather like the bees. Without the mushrooms, without the fungi, the world as we know it would end. Trees would fall over and still be there 100 years from now because they wouldn't decompose back into the earth, which is part of the earth's growth cycle.
Okay, now we also get into things like, what was it called? Not marvelous mushrooms, fabulous fungi, fantastic fungi.
Yes.
Have you seen the documentary series?
Yes, I have.
It's wonderful. If you haven't seen it yet, I would suggest you do.
It's a great series.
But they delve very much into the magic mushrooms, your psilocybins. So you do get a lot of mushrooms which they're using quite successfully for people who have got post-traumatic stress disorder and that kind of thing, along with things like ibogaine. But there are a lot of mushrooms which aren't magic, but are magic.
Yeah.
Like lion's mane. And I know that, Paul, you've been trying to grow your lion's mane. How is it going? And tell us a bit more about that fungus.
Okay, lion's mane, yes, it's a little bit more difficult, mainly because of the climate. We're in quite a hot climate, so you have to keep them in sort of air-conned rooms, keep the temperature at about 18 degrees. But different mushrooms grow at different stages. So the lion's mane, the oysters, and things like that are primary decomposters. So they will grow off the side of a tree, and generally they start growing on the side of the tree when it's reached the end of its life cycle. Soon or quite soon after that, the tree will fall over and crash into the ground, and then other mushrooms will start to grow, what we call the secondary decomposters, down to the final stage where you get your button mushrooms and, yes, your magic psilocybin mushrooms, which want to grow on very well or very pasteurized, decomposed matter.
Paul, just to get something straight here, we were talking about the natural state of all these mushrooms. Once they get into a shop, and you were saying that they contain all these wonderful minerals, do they in fact still retain all these wonderful minerals? So
Yes.
often we think, oh, I'm buying this and it's so healthy for me, and you find out later that actually it's not.
They do. They do retain their vitamins. I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that we don't peel them and throw bits away. We just cook them and eat them. Something, a sort of an unknown fact about mushrooms is when you buy them, if you put them in the sun for half an hour before you cook and eat them, their vitamin D content multiplies by hundreds. They become a really powerful source of vitamin D.
And apart from that, they're actually better for you if you eat them when you've cooked them in a little bit of oil, because the heat breaks down something, the cellulose or whatever, and it makes your body able to uptake all that good stuff much easier.
Now you see, nobody tells us that because we
I'm
think
telling you that.
Yeah. Oh. As I said,
Yes,
nobody
you
tells
shouldn't.
us that. So in other words,
You shouldn't eat them raw.
yeah.
Shouldn't slice them in a salad.
Really, you shouldn't eat them raw.
No, because of the way that they're grown. You mentioned that's basically the cell structure, and it needs heat to break that down so that you can get the goodness from the inside of the mushrooms.
Now you also said something about peeling them. Is it necessary to peel them?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. I was
okay.
just comparing them to a carrot, for example.
Okay, so basically the two rules are leave them out in the sun for half an hour and cook them before you're going to use them, even if they're going into a salad. Rather,
Yes.
you
Just cook them
before.
lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You learned two things today.
Okay, so which are the easiest ones to grow at home? I mean, I know there's kits, but as I said, I didn't have much success. And the oyster mushrooms are the ones that I think are sold most, aren't they?
Yes, oyster mushrooms are the easiest to grow because they're one of the fastest ones to grow. And as I said, the problem with growing mushrooms is that you have competing molds and fungi that will take over and destroy your grow. And because the oyster grows so quickly, everything's a race against time. Eventually, your substrate will go moldy, something else will grow on it, but you want your mushrooms to come out first.
Okay,
Are
now
they suitable for growing indoors?
Very much so.
In little bowls and that
Because you
in your kitchen?
That well, indoors you have control. So the mushrooms want a high humidity, and they want cooler temperatures, and they need a trigger when they're ready to fruit. So the trigger is generally opening something up, giving it more oxygen, giving it more light, and that is a trigger in the wild for the mushroom to start to grow. Because don't forget, the reason the mushroom grows is at the end of its cycle, it drops the spores from underneath its gills, which then start the mushroom life cycle all over. So in Japan, when they grow, I think it's shiitake mushrooms, they grow them on logs that are buried into the ground. They stand up straight, but a third of the log is buried into the ground. Part of their trigger for the mushrooms to start growing is they walk along with a baseball bat and they smack all these logs, and the shock is rather like the tree being struck by lightning and falling over, triggers the mushroom to say, hang on, we need to multiply now, we're about to die.
Okay, so basically, if you've got like a punch bag at home hanging from the ceiling in your garage, you can go and punch that if you've got your shiitakes growing on it. So just pretend that that's your grow bag and use it as a punch bag as well. That would work, two things at the same time.
Now we know why Melanie's bag didn't grow.
One of the things that mushrooms for me has been like really fascinating is things like lion's mane and the other medical mushrooms. How are they working when it comes to things like mental, like what do you call that? Dementia. Sorry, I feel like I'm getting that today. So dementia, yes. With cancers, with blood pressure, all of those really hectic things that people are getting. I know that medical mushrooms are helping a lot.
Yes, there's huge research at the moment going on in the UK, in the States, in Europe, where they're looking at people microdosing, taking very, very small quantities of psilocybin mushroom on a sort of a daily or other daily basis. And apparently it's very good for sort of helping with depression. And in fact, in megadoses, they've found that when subjects are given a megadose of psilocybin, their depression can go away for months, 6 months, 7 months, before anything recurs.
But what about the more physical aspects of problems in the body? I mean, you wouldn't be taking psilocybin for that. Which mushrooms would you be looking at, and where would you get them from? And what are the legalities?
Okay, look, obviously magic mushrooms are illegal. You can buy the spores here, but it's subject to your using them for scientific experiments. But if you see the number of sites out there that are actually selling these scientific experiments, I think they're doing very well. But yes, but most of them, you spoke about lion's mane. Lion's mane is very, very good at getting stuff to cross through the brain blood barrier. I think that's what it's called. And basically what it does is it stimulates the brain itself to create the feel-good hormones that are missing in a lot of people. And that's a perfectly natural, it's a legal way of doing it. If you look at something like cordyceps is very, very powerful on your lung structure with your breathing and things like that. So a lot of the pills that you can get nowadays, the capsules, the main ingredients are cordyceps and lion's mane, and it's supposed to be a good all-rounder to help keep you healthy.
Right, so there you go, to all the scientists who are busy experimenting away.
Be careful what you're growing, you might get the wrong mold.
Paul, thank you very much for taking time out to join us today on Mansfield Today. It's been fascinating talking to you. Mel, fascinating having you in the studio once again.
I might go and find you some lion's mane or cordyceps. The cordyceps for you.
Maybe I'll go find you some of that stuff that the yaks like.
That's what the one I'm talking about.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Anyway, enjoy it. Enjoy the rest of the weekend as well. And we'll catch you again next week.
Good one. Thank you for joining us on Mansfield Today.